about doing online high school?
What? Oh, this is mine. Okay. So Andrew's going to talk about how we got into this situation with online high school. But a couple things just so everybody knows what we're talking about. So for a lot of you will understand this concept. This is not owning your own business. This is working from home. Is basically what it is. So the school that we attend, and most of the online high schools are public high schools, just like the one in your neighborhood. They're accredited by the state. They have the same curriculum requirements. You still have to go through Ames testing, but they're not charter schools. They're a public high school. They just happen to happen online. They are accredited, as I said, and they have teachers. So it's not homeschooling either. You're not, like I said, you're not running your own company. You're not doing it all yourself. You're working for somebody else. So you have classes, you have teachers who work with you. Andrew has classes every week, typically once a week. For every class, they'll have an hour session with an actual teacher who's conversing through their own, they've got their own application that they use, like a Collaborate Blackboard kind of thing, where the teacher can talk and the kids can raise their hands and they can type in questions and the teacher will say, oh, there's been a question about this, or you know, whatever. So it's actual real interaction with the teacher, extra help with teachers. So you do have a teacher. Like as a parent, you don't have to do this education thing yourself. A lot of them will have an online and on-site option. So at our school, which is Arizona Virtual Academy, which is run by K-12, it's one of the largest online education providers in the world. They have a program where Andrew could go to a YMCA in the East Valley a few times a week and do the online high school from there with an adult present and other kids around and play basketball if he wanted to or something like that. It's an option, it's not a requirement, but a lot of them will have something like that. Which school you go to and what you're looking for really depends on the goals that you have. So some people choose online high school because going to a brick and mortar doesn't fit with their schedule. Right? It's just hard to get their kids to and from school. A lot of kids who are in the military and travel all the time are in online school because otherwise they'd just be switching schools constantly. Kids who are athletes and are like training for the Olympics or have crazy schedules or whatever will often do online school because they can do it from everywhere. So that's one reason to do it, is a schedule thing. Another reason, and the reason we did it, which Andrew will talk about in a minute, was that the regular brick and mortar high schools, it's not working very well for us, for Andrew's needs or for our needs as parents. There's a lot of reasons that can be. It may be because you're having, your kid has some challenges that regular school just isn't equipped very well to deal with. It may be that your kid is really advanced and needs to move at a faster, independent pace than the other kids around it. It may be that your kid needs extra help and can't keep up very well when all 30 kids in the same class have to move at the same speed. For some people, online high school is about like your belief system and whether you want to throw your kid, who maybe you've been homeschooling your kid or you've had them in a private school because of your religious beliefs or whatever, and then throwing them into high school with a lot of people who you aren't comfortable with them being around is an issue for some people. So lots of different reasons to choose high school and an online high school, but it depends on what your goals are as to what you do. So Andrew's going to talk about why we did this, how we got to this place. Yep, come up here, Andrew.
Hi, how's it going? So the reason I switched to online high school was basically I didn't really feel in public high school that teachers were paying enough attention to one in particular person. I realize there are a lot of kids, but sometimes it just gets ridiculous. They didn't really understand me because I had ADHD. I took medicine for it, and I'm currently off because I got over it. But yeah, I was always distracted, and they didn't really want to deal with that one kid, is off the hinges and stuff. So yeah, they didn't really deal with me, and I just felt like I deserved better. a couple of my teachers in public high school, they gave you extra credit if you went to their tennis matches, or they took points off on tests if you didn't write them in pencil, you know. You had to write them in pen and all that. There are just some rules that don't work for certain kids, because it just doesn't work. So when I went to online high school, I noticed that the teachers, they really get you. They realize some of the struggles that kids have in public high school, and they really try to focus one-on-one with that kid. So if there's a kid who's struggling, they try and help them out the most. They try to figure out what's going on, figure out what they can do to get them up in a higher grade, you know, A's or B's, and they keep working with you, and it really helps you out a lot. So,
Andrew had always been in public school. We didn't do private school. He was always a public school kid. And we did a year of his freshman year at one public high school in our district, and then did the first semester of sophomore year at a different one, and then decided to bail over the holidays and do online school instead. And part of our frustration, honestly, was communication. Like, we had real trouble finding out how Andrew was doing or getting any action going if he was struggling on things. We had a tremendous amount of trouble finding out what was happening with his grades. Because even though they ostensibly had a website where teachers would post grades, teachers didn't usually post grades in a timely manner. And so when they did post, sometimes you wouldn't get your grades until like 2 weeks before the end of the semester. And all of a sudden it was like, holy moly, then it's too late to do anything about it. But we would try to talk to teachers about where Andrew was struggling. Many times, honestly, they obviously didn't know. And we had a teacher, one of Andrew's math teachers, that we met with repeatedly about why he was doing so great on the homework and struggling on the tests, and we got all sorts of this and that, and he's not focused, and he's not working hard enough. And we didn't find out till close to the end of the semester that the grades on the homework were for turning it in, and that they were never graded. So the teacher had no idea what concepts Andrew was struggling with, and couldn't have told us when we asked. We didn't know. We didn't know. And of course it showed up on the tests. So there was a lot of sort of compliance grading that was frustrating to us, because it wasn't about what you learned. It was about whether you dressed out for PE, or whether you used a pencil, or things that didn't seem to us substantial, and we really couldn't get a handle on what was happening so that we could help them. So that was a big problem. So we did a year and a half of public school before we made this switch. Anything else on that, Andrew? Okay. Okay, that's you.
what are the differences between online high school and public high school? Well, for one thing, you're online, so there are going to be some differences just in between schools. You are going to have some problems occasionally, errors or things like that, just minor things that you can get over. Another thing is friends. When you're online high school, you don't really see many of your friends because you're usually working from home. So you have to go out and you have to make a point to go out and do things. Maybe go to a concert or to public school events, to a dance or something. And you bring all your friends there, maybe go to a football game, and that's how you hang out. You don't really meet anyone really new online. It's basically just, hey classmate, and that's it. Another thing, tests and quizzes. Usually in public high schools, the tests and quizzes, you have to spell out the answers, give full definitions and stuff. You still do that to some of a degree in online high school, but most of the tests and quizzes are bubble answers. So it's a really different way of studying because you have to focus on dates, names, because they can switch every little thing around and you can miss it. But you just have to really focus more. You have to get your head in the right place and you can get it done. Events. The online schools, they do have events like football games, prom, all that stuff. So basically, again, you just have to go out and do it, and you meet classmates through there. I met a girl a little bit ago. We were on a snowboarding event. I was in a club where you go up to Flagstaff every other week, and you go snowboarding or skiing up in the mountains. I met 5 new people there, and I'm currently friends with them on Facebook, and we talk all the time and trying to get together and do some events and all that stuff. But again, it's not just like going to public school where you know everyone there. You really have to get to know people. Class meetings, the online high school, it's a little weird when you first try it because you have homework and you have meetings. The meeting is basically a big online chat room where you have teachers and students in a scroll bar and a big whiteboard. It's basically like a slideshow, except the teacher can edit things, draw on things, they can put new info up whenever they need, and you basically just go over a lesson, and if you have any questions, type it in the chat, and you figure it out. It was really weird to me when I first tried it. I didn't really get it, but over time, you really get the hang of it, and it helps you out a lot more than regular classes do. The pros and cons. Again, the classes. If you have a question in a class, usually you don't always get picked. You know, you're standing there with your hand in the air for about 10 minutes, and then they finally call on you, and you forget your question. It happens. But for online high school, you know, you can just submit a question and it goes straight to their inbox and they answer it in maybe 2 minutes. You know, I was working on an assignment not too long ago, maybe a week ago, and I was a little late on it because I had other things that were going on. And I asked my teacher if it was okay if I could postpone the due date. And it was about 5 minutes to maybe 10 minutes before it had to be submitted. I got a response in maybe a minute later after I submitted that question, and she said, yes, you can postpone it. And 2 minutes after, the grade book showed that I could submit it next week. They're very fast on their responses, and I really like that about online school because they really focus on you, they really focus on what you're doing, how you're doing, and they really try to help you out in any way possible. The time. Big thing about online high school is the time frames that you have to work. It's not like public high school where I gotta wake up at 6 a.m., gotta brush my teeth, gotta have my cereal, oh, there goes the bus, Mom, can I get a ride home? Or, you know, you can basically wake up whenever you want, and heck, I work maybe 3 out of 5 days a week just in my pajamas, you know? I don't even get dressed, just wake up and do your work.
I do the same thing.
So there's no real time frame. So you can basically get your work done as long as you make a chance, twisting my words. As long as you make a point to get your work done, you can do it whenever. My schoolwork usually takes about 5 hours, a regular school day, to get done, and I can do it in the morning, in the afternoon, I could do it the next day, because all the work is initially due Sunday. You don't have to have it in after Sunday. So
Andrew works really well late at night. Like that's just when his brain is engaged and focused. So he'll do a lot of work, you know, between 8 and midnight, and because that's when he's ready to work. He's on a completely different cycle than I am, but it works for him.
The work, it's also pretty cool because, like I said, you can do it whenever. You can span it out for a long period of time, or you can just get a week's worth of work done in one day. It's really up to you and how focused you are. So that's another thing I really like. Another thing I like is teachers. Like I said, they really focus on you. They really make a point to go and see how you're doing. You know, they can call you if you give them your phone number and call you up and say, hey Andy, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm struggling with this, this, and this. Oh, let's set up a class Friday to go over the stuff that you're not doing too well on. And it's a one-on-one class, which really helps because you can put up pictures, you can put up files on the whiteboard, and you can just go over basically like 2 days worth of work. And it's amazing. One of the cons is the tests. Like I said, it's a bubble test, you know, so if you have a way of saying it, like I know kids have done this because I've done this, you don't really know how to explain it, so it's asking you a question, you know, when did the British do this, this, and this? You don't really have the words to explain it, so, you know, it's just one of those things with the bubble sheet. You can't really explain in your own words. So that is one bad thing that I've noticed. Another thing, I think this is either a pro or a con, is responsibility. Again, you have to make a point to get your work done. This is something a lot of kids struggle with because, you know, like kids, they usually blow it off till the last second. I've done that. But yeah, as long as you make a point to get it done, it's really easy, you know. You can get your work done, and then you can go do your own thing, whether it be skateboarding or, you know, hanging out with friends at the mall or whatever. You have to make a point to get it done. You can't have someone sitting over your shoulder like your mom or your dad say, hey, you need to get this done. That doesn't always work. She's tried it. It doesn't work. You just have to make a point, and that's, I cannot stress that enough.
Okay, so that's from Andrew's perspective. I thought I would tell you from my perspective what I really like. So one of the big challenges, like I said, that we had with public high school was understanding what Andrew was getting and what he wasn't getting. And grades weren't up. Sometimes we wouldn't get them for a really long time. Or he'd take a test and the grade would show up, but you don't get the test back because they're using the same test year after year, so they won't give the test back to the kids. So you got a 40 on it or something, but you don't know what you got right and what you got wrong. And the teacher doesn't either. And by the time you even get the grade, you're way past that subject matter in the class, and the class has moved on. So, you know, we would have these situations where, you know, I would get really frustrated with Andrew because I'd be like, what did you miss? And he would say, I don't know. And I could never tell whether it was ADHD Andrew who'd gotten an answer but had lost the paper or forgotten to bring it home, or whether he really had no idea, was never told. And most of the time it was the latter. He just really he didn't know. So we couldn't help him. And that would absolutely drive me crazy. With Online Highschool, as Andrew said, a lot of your things are like bubble tests, or you have to complete, you know, an exercise or go through. They do have essay tests. He has to write essays, or he has to write poems or whatever, and those are graded individually by the teacher. But a lot of it is computer graded. So he'll take a test, and it will instantly show him what he got, and it will instantly, we'll be able to go through the test and see what he got wrong, and it'll give us the right answer. And so we can right away see exactly what he's struggling with and where he's having a problem. And that is, I'm a control freak, and that drove me crazy at the old school. And now we don't have those issues. We know exactly how he did. We know right away how he did, and we know what he did poorly on, or where he's having challenges. So that was, you know, absolutely huge for us in terms of the difference. Looking ahead. So at our school, and I don't know if this is true of every online school because we've only done one, but the whole schedule for the semester is laid out in advance. And you can go to the calendar and see exactly what's coming all week, all next week, or whatever. So for a kid with ADHD, keeping track of what's due, what's coming when that big project is happening that I need to do some advanced work on is almost impossible. Like, I don't care how high performing your ADHD kid is, it is very, very difficult. And they spend a tremendous amount of time and energy just on stuff like that. Just when is it due, whatever. Now you can print out the calendar for every single class, every single assignment for the whole rest of the semester. So there's a lot of ability to plan ahead and be like, oh, we're going to be out of town, so you got to bump that work up into this week or whatever. This is another great, amazing thing that the technology of online school gives you that regular school doesn't. You can repeat the class. So if Andrew attends a class and they're explaining something in math and they're going through this whole Blackboard thing and the teacher's answering questions, if he doesn't get it the first time, they've recorded it. And he can go back and replay exactly the same class he attended and stop it and start it and go back a little bit and watch it over and over again. If he couldn't attend that class because he had a dentist appointment, they've recorded it. so he can go back and watch it another time. And for kids with some of his challenges where focus and stuff like that is a problem, being able to watch the class again is a huge benefit. It's just, I can't even tell you how amazing that opportunity is for kids to go through something like that. Andrew pointed this out, the teachers. We have better engagement with Andrew's teachers in online high school than we ever had in brick and mortar. They know exactly what he's doing, they're in regular contact with him, and more importantly for me, they're incredibly focused on Andrew learning the material, right? It's not about compliance, it's about education. So one of the first things that happened to us when we switched, online school was, a whole different, it was a big adjustment for us. And one of the first things that happened was that Andrew bombed an algebra test, or geometry test, bombed it. And we were like, oh no, this is terrible, this is a nightmare. And the teacher got in touch with us and said, why don't we schedule a session to go over what he missed, and I'll reset the test for him and he can take it again. And that was like, oh, that was like a teacher focused on making sure he learned the stuff more than he took the test, And we hear that a lot for teachers, like, no problem, you have a chance to do it over, but in order to do that, here's what you have to do. I'm going to send you a review sheet, you got to fill it out, and then we're going to meet for a half an hour in a live class and talk through it, and then I'll reset the test for you. So it's a lot more about education, and we've had great, amazing supportive teachers in online school, way more than we ever had in real school, where they just didn't, we were lucky if they recognized them, because there were just so many kids. So that's been amazing for us. The schedule. So Andrew's school has a schedule. All of his work, it lists it every day, and it's all due by Sunday at midnight. So like Andrew said, pros and cons. It is not the type of schedule you have in a regular school where you're in class from 8 to 2 and your homework's due the next day. So it's taken some adjustment. We've had some situations where a lot of stuff got left, and he's working Saturday and Sunday when we want him to be doing other things. But as we've gotten more used to it, he's developed his own schedule for getting work done and is able to balance his workload and make sure things happen. So it's different. It's not, Andrew has a lot of free time, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. So it's just different. Structure, same thing. Sometimes ADHD kids in particular really do well with this is when we do this is when we do this. That's not there by nature in online high school. It's just not there. You have to build it. You have to make it. So you as a learning coach, which is what they call in our school anyway, you have to have a designated learning coach, one of your parents, who's kind of keeping in touch with the teachers and has access to your grades and your classwork and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you have to build a structure and say, okay, you're going to get up at 8 and you're going to work till 2, and then after that we'll see where you are if you want to go hang out with your friends. Andrew and I have been really close ever since he was tiny. But as of the beginning of his sophomore year in high school, every conversation we had ended up in a fight. Because it always went to what the hell is going on with your math class, or what is going on with school. And he didn't know, and that made me frustrated that he didn't know, and it was a constant battle. We were always doing this. And that just broke my heart. And now, Andrew and I have a much more relaxed relationship. I mean, we still have our moments. He's a teenager and I'm his mom. But we have a much more collaborative relationship. We work together on the stuff that he needs to do. It has, don't you think? It has totally revolutionized our relationship with each other as we work through this process. So if you are fighting with your kid about school, like for us, this was transformative. Right, Ron? That's my husband. He's going through the same thing with us. So it's been amazing for us at home. And I work at home. Ron works at home a lot of the time, so we're there, we're present, and you would imagine that having a teenager in the house all the time, he would hate us, we would hate him, it would just be drama, and it isn't that way. Like, it's worked out really well. But a lot of it is just having information that we can talk about and not wondering where the hell the information is and how he's going to get it. So it took that whole problem away from us. Okay, So I thought I would talk about some tips if you're thinking about this, if you're thinking about going to online school. So look for an accredited school. They aren't all accredited schools. The problem is if you don't have an accredited school, it's not going to count when you want to try to get into college. It's not a public high school. Like you've got to have a school that's a recognized high school, just like with a charter. You've got to, so make sure you're checking for that. You know how we give like school grades in Arizona? So my sister has her PhD in educational statistics. Like she is one of the people working in this field of how to measure student performance and school performance and incent teachers and incent students, all that kind of stuff. We had long talks about this, and before we decided to do this, she was part of our discussion process. One of the, you can argue about whether grades, performing, underperforming, or whatever, are any good, whether they're based on anything. For online schools in particular, I don't think they're a good measure because there's such a broad range of kids in an online school because of their goals, because of why they're in an online school. So you'll have kids who are on probation. They've gotten in trouble with the law, they're not allowed, they're a discipline problem, they're not allowed to attend a regular school, so they're going to an online school. You have kids who are overperformers, who are just like trying to get through high school as fast as they can so they get into Harvard at 16. You have like, and everybody in between, there's just a huge range. And so schools, you can look at their graduation rates and stuff like that, but the thing about online school is that it's all about your kid, right? Your kid isn't the victim of 30 other kids in the class that all have to move together. It's your kid. So you can look at grades if you want to, but I would caution you that they're not necessarily a good measure of how well that school is going to work for your kid. And much more than in a brick and mortar school, this is going to be about your kid. It's going to be a very one-on-one activity between your kid and the school.
I would recommend ADHD.
Yeah, Arizona Virtual Academy is what we use, but there are others. Plan. Oh, make sure they have a plan for how they get kids to graduation. Not all schools do that, but you don't want your kid to go to school for a year and a half and then drop out. Like that is not the point of trying to get them through high school. So whatever school you're looking at, make sure they have a plan for moving kids through graduation. Andrew has a counselor. He has an additional course every semester that requires him to attend some counselor like talk events about going to college or they had one just recently on child slavery. They have like all these just interesting things, and he has to do a graduation plan, and he has to meet with his counselor about his graduation plan. So make sure they have something like that in place to help your kid get successfully through the way you want to do it. Communication is really important. We talk to, or try to, a lot of online schools, and like you call and you leave a message and nobody will call you back. So going to school online is fine, but you still need like humans involved in the process. And I did worry personally, if I would call a school to get information, my kid might want to enroll there and never hear anything back. That's not, for me, that's like warning Will Robinson. So make sure you have good communication from the school. Make sure you can talk to parents who have their kids at the school or who have gone through this process. So AZVA, when you start your interest process and you say you might want to go, they assign you a human being who helps you basically onboard, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They assign you a person. But the other thing they do is, here are parents in your area that are willing to talk to you. And here are their phone numbers, and here are their names, and they have a kid in the East Valley that's your kid's age, that goes to school, so you can talk to them. And I love that, because I didn't know anybody. We have no friends who had kids in online school, because it was so new. So being able to talk to some other parents about their real experience with it and stuff was good. And it's like the testimonial thing. It's like they're willing to give you a parent to talk to. I know that they're probably giving you the better parents, but still, it's good. It's nice to be able to talk to somebody. Onboarding, again, as I said, we had like a coach who worked with us to get us through this application process and the files from the old school and a 501 plan or whatever it's called or whatever. There was a person that we could talk to on the phone, and she would call us and say, how are you doing? I got all your stuff. And that was really nice. That helped us through the process. It wasn't all online at that point, and that was helpful for us as parents. So I would look for that. Info. Oh, where you get info? So we were lucky. We were looking at this process at Christmas break 2011. And because we decided we were not going to waste another semester with dealing with what he had been dealing with. So we're like literally over Christmas break trying to figure out where to send him to high school. And right then, the Arizona Republic ran a big series called The Race to Online. And if you Google that, they did like 7 or 8 different days of talking about online schooling and what could be pros and cons and all the research. But one of the things they did, like the overview, when you go to that page, you'll see it, but they have like an overview thing, and it has a link to the Arizona Board of Education or Department of Education or whatever, where they've like consolidated all of the online schools in Arizona that are accredited. And you can see the school, there's a link to the website, there's a phone number, they tell you what years. Is it K-12, is it just high school, is it just K-8, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And literally, man, I was on that thing all the time because we were clicking through, calling everyone that seemed like it might be a good shot for us and checking out their websites and all that kind of stuff. So if you're thinking about this, the Arizona Republic, the Race to Online was very, very helpful for us in just sort of understanding the groundwork for this and what to look for and what the research says and what the schools are and what your options are and all that kind of stuff. So I would absolutely start with something like that, and it's all Arizona specific. So it was incredibly, incredibly helpful. And again, think about your goals of why you're doing it. For Andrew, we want Andrew to graduate successfully from high school with as little fuss as we can get it done. You know, I mean, Andrew's not going to work in a factory job. He does not need to learn to sit for 8 hours a day. He does not, like, those are not skills that are going to be valuable to Andrew as an adult. He needs to learn how to problem solve. He needs to learn how to be creative. You know, and there are charter schools doing amazing things with project-based learning and all that kind of stuff. This is just traditional high school. It's the same curriculum, but it's handled in a radically different way. So for Andrew, getting through high school as quickly and easily as he can, we have not found it any less challenging from a content standpoint. He still struggled with geometry. He still has challenges memorizing dates in history. It's not that it's easier. I mean, if you have a kid who's going to cheat, then it's easier to cheat with online high school. Andrew doesn't cheat, but if you had a kid who did that, yeah, you could probably cheat your way through some of this stuff, but you still have to pass the Ames test to get through. You know, there's just still stuff you have to do. But for us, that was our goal. Let's get Andrew successfully through school. Let's eliminate this feeling that he was getting, that he could never be successful in school, that he was dumb, that he was stupid, that he couldn't do it. And that's where we were going. And I honestly believe that if we kept going in that direction, Andrew would have dropped out, and our relationship with Andrew would have just been irrevocably damaged as part of that process. And he's totally turned that around. He has embraced this. He works hard at it. He's stepped up and manages his time. You know, people always ask me about the social aspect of having your kid in online high school, and I always tell them, you know, I have my own business. I work from home. I had to do the same thing he's doing, which is building a community on my own, finding people that are like-minded, finding people that are interesting that I like to hang out with, and making an effort to go see them or to go do things with them.